For 2 years, Ford's electric vehicle division did one thing with absolute perfection. It bled $10 billion. They canceled major programs, announced nearly $20 billion in EV-related special items, and left Detroit with a humiliating reality. Building a heavy, full-size electric truck was an economic death trap. Then Ford dropped this. Starting at exactly $29,945, including destination, the 2027 Ford Fathom is a brand-new four-door pure electric pickup priced more than $3,600 cheaper than a base gas-powered Ford Ranger. On paper, that sounds like an industrial miracle, but in the real world, batteries are heavy, towing crushes EV range, and Ford is steering this sub-30K truck straight into the crosshairs of two global titans, the indestructible diesel Toyota Hilux and the 436-horsepower hybrid BYD Shark. Did Ford actually solve the impossible EV cost equation, or did they strip this truck to the bone just to print a $30,000 headline? Let's look at the numbers. The $29,945 shock. Here's the number that should stop you. A base Ford Ranger starts around $33,550. Ford just priced a fully electric truck below its own gas-powered truck. That's not a rounding trick. That's Ford deliberately undercutting itself. But remember where this company was standing 18 months ago. Nearly $10 billion in EV losses across 2024 and 2025. Nearly $20 billion in EV-related special items announced. Entire programs canceled outright. Every signal pointed the same direction. Detroit could build electric trucks, but not cheap ones, not without setting money on fire. So the real question isn't how cheap is Fathom, it's what did Ford have to remove to get here? A smaller battery? Cheaper electronics? Reduced capability? Ford chose a 400-volt electrical architecture instead of chasing the industry's move toward pricier 800-volt systems. A cost decision, not a performance flex. Every one of those choices either proves Ford solved the equation or proves it just found a clever way to sell people less truck. There were really only three paths available. Keep building bigger, longer-range EVs and inherit the same cost disease that already cost billions. Build a stripped-down budget truck and hand every critic exactly the ammunition they expected, or retreat from pure EVs altogether and surrender the entire affordable segment to whoever gets there first. Ford needed price, range, capability, and profitability simultaneously, something the traditional EV formula has never delivered all at once. Fathom is Ford's bet that the formula itself, not the execution, was the actual problem. We're about to find out. The Fortress, the Wild Card, and Ford's Trap. Before judging Fathom, you need to know exactly what it's walking into. Toyota Hilux has existed since 1968, with more than 18 million sold worldwide. This is not a nameplate Ford can outmarket. It's an institution. The current diesel 4x4 runs a 2.8-liter turbo diesel engine, the 1GD FTV, producing 201 horsepower and 500 newton-meters of torque. It tows up to 3,500 kilograms, about 7,700 pounds, and carries an 80-liter fuel tank that can be refilled in minutes, no charger required, ever. If someone is hauling heavy equipment through remote Australia or rural Africa, this truck isn't just competitive, it's often the only option that works. BYD Shark takes the opposite approach. Built on BYD's dual-mode off-road platform, it pairs a 1.5-liter turbo engine with two electric motors for a combined 436 horsepower and 650 newton-meters of torque. Its 32.2 kilowatt-hour Blade battery delivers around 55 miles of pure electric range, and DC fast charging takes it from 30% to 80% in about 21 minutes. Combined gasoline-electric range reaches roughly 675 kilometers on the WLTP cycle, and it still tows about 5,500 pounds. Drive around town on electricity, then erase all charging anxiety on a road trip with gasoline in reserve. Two completely different philosophies, one shared strength. Neither forces the customer to compromise on range. Hilux wins on raw endurance and infrastructure independence. Shark wins on flexibility, giving up almost nothing to have both systems on board. That's the wall Fathom has to climb, a pure electric truck with no gasoline backup and no century of reputation behind it, trying to convince buyers that enough truck beats maximum truck once you look at the price tag. What Ford actually built. So how does a company that just lost $10 billion on EVs suddenly build one for $29,945? Not with one miracle part, with a platform engineered from a blank sheet to remove cost everywhere at once. Ford's new universal EV platform reportedly uses 20% fewer parts, 25% fewer fasteners, and 40% fewer assembly workstations, cutting total build time by around 15%. The electrical system moves to a 48-volt zonal architecture, consolidating what used to be 30-plus scattered control modules into roughly 5 main ones, reportedly trimming the wiring harness by about 4,000 feet and 22 pounds compared to Ford's earlier EVs. Thinner copper, fewer connectors, less labor, every meter removed is money saved. On the factory floor, Ford is dismantling its own century-old invention, the linear moving assembly line. The new system, called the assembly tree, builds the truck in 3 parallel branches: front section, rear section, and the structural battery core, joined together late in the process, with large single-piece aluminum unicastings replacing dozens of smaller stamped parts. Ford is backing this with roughly $2 billion into the Louisville, Kentucky plant and about $3 billion more into Blue Oval Battery Park, Michigan. $5 billion total, tied to nearly 4,000 U.S. jobs. That's steel and concrete already going into the ground, not a slide in a press deck. The battery itself is the centerpiece. Fathom uses structural prismatic lithium iron phosphate cells, no nickel, no cobalt in the cathode chemistry, integrated into a structural battery core. Ford says the platform is engineered to deliver range comparable with competitors while using a battery up to 1/3 smaller. Ford's logic? A battery can represent around 40% of an EV's total cost and over a quarter of its weight, so fewer cells means less material, less mass, less reinforcement, and a lower price at the end of the chain. Blue Oval Battery Park is already producing pre-production cells and remains on track to ship production packs sometime in 2026, meaning Fathom launches on a battery built on American soil, not shipped in from overseas. Performance is targeted to be as quick as a Mustang EcoBoost, with 4 doors, a real bed, a secure front trunk, more passenger space than a Toyota RAV4, high power outlets, and bi-directional charging capable of running job site tools or backing up a house. Put the size numbers side by side and the strategy gets clearer. Fathom is expected to land closer to a Ford Maverick or Ranger in footprint, not a full-size F-150. That's deliberate. A smaller, lighter body needs a smaller battery to move it, which needs less structure to support that battery, which is exactly the cost spiral Ford is trying to reverse. Every dimension on this truck was chosen to protect the price, not to chase maximum interior volume or maximum towing. Still, specs on a press release aren't proof. Ford has shown us exactly how it plans to make this truck cheap. It has not yet confirmed the final towing figures, EPA range, payload, or peak DC charging speed, the numbers that will actually decide whether Fathom works as a real truck or just as a real price. The real fight is total cost of ownership. Fathom was never designed to out-tow Hilux. Nobody towing 7,700 pounds through the Outback is cross-shopping a compact EV pickup, and Ford knows it. The real target is the buyer Hilux doesn't need to fight for: electricians, plumbers, municipal fleets, contractors who drive predictable routes and go home to a charger every night. If most truck owners rarely use the capability they're paying for, that's exactly where Ford is aiming. Against BYD Shark, it's a straight philosophical clash. Shark eliminates range anxiety by carrying two propulsion systems everywhere, gasoline and battery. Fathom bets that a driver with home charging and predictable mileage doesn't need that redundancy at all. One truck adds flexibility, the other removes complexity. Ownership data over the next few years will settle which bet was right. But the number that could decide this fight sits in total cost of ownership. At $29,945, Fathom lands in the same price bracket as Ford's own gas trucks. Ford has gone so far as to target a 5-year cost of ownership lower than that of a 3-year-old used Tesla Model Y. A Hilux diesel equivalent, once you factor in fuel across a working life of hundreds of thousands of kilometers, carries a running cost Fathom is specifically engineered to undercut. For a fleet charging overnight, that means no weekly diesel bill, no oil changes, and far less powertrain maintenance than either the Hilux's 2.8-liter diesel or the Shark's dual gasoline-electric system. The exact math depends on electricity prices, fuel costs, and mileage. But for the right fleet, running electric instead of diesel adds up fast, and that's the entire argument behind cheaper than diesel. 2027 Ford's Moment of Truth. There's also a longer game here. Fathom is only the first vehicle on the universal EV platform, which Ford says can scale from small city cars up to commercial vans. Every efficiency proven here, the wiring, the assembly tree, the smaller battery, becomes the blueprint for everything that follows: crossovers, vans, maybe even a full-size truck down the line, all inheriting the same cost discipline. Ford wants roughly half its global volume electrified or hybridized by 2030, which means Fathom isn't really about winning one truck segment. It's the test case for whether Detroit can build a genuinely low-cost EV lineup at scale, the same way BYD has already proven it can in China, and the same way Toyota has proven diesel efficiency can be milked for another 50 years without reinventing anything. 2026 is when Blue Oval Battery Park starts shipping real batteries. 2027 is ground zero, when actual customer trucks roll out of Louisville and every number on every slide meets the real world. If range holds up under towing, if Ford's smaller LFP pack proves durable over years of daily fleet use, and if Ford can build these profitably at volume, Fathom stops needing to beat Hilux or Shark on paper. It forces both of them to explain why their trucks should cost thousands more for capability most buyers rarely use to its full extent. But if that $29,945 sticker quietly becomes $38,000 or $42,000 once options and production reality kick in, if towing collapses the range the way it does on nearly every other electric truck, if the smaller battery turns out to be too small for anything beyond a light commute, if the assembly tree creates reliability problems Ford didn't anticipate at scale, then this stops looking like a breakthrough. It starts looking like proof that Chinese manufacturers still own the cost advantage, that Toyota still owns the practical end of the market with its diesel range and infrastructure independence, and that Ford spent $5 billion discovering the same physics everyone else already knew. So, is this the truck that finally lets Ford rewrite EV economics, or a $30,000 headline with a much bigger asterisk waiting in 2027? Tell me straight in the comments, are you buying the $29,945 promise, or do you think this truck shows up in 3 years at $40,000? And if you want to see how Toyota and BYD respond to Ford playing this card, subscribe, because that breakdown is coming next.